Okay. Today is January the 20th, 2012. Could you please tell me your full name and your birth date?
George Jefferson Abington.
Mm-hmm.
It was born July the 27th, 1928,
Okay. Where did you live as a child, Mr. Abington?
in Winstville, Missouri.
Where can you tell me approximately, where would that be today? Did you live on a farm or did you live in town?
We were on a farm 2.5 miles out of town, north of town.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What are your parents' names, please?
My father was Anthony Jerome Abington.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was Irene Bell Abington.
Okay. What did your mother and father? What was their work at the time? Farming, and your mother also.
Right.
What kind of things did you?
Later, she went to work as a cook, Green Lantern Cafe in Winstville.
Okay. All right. What kind of things did your dad just raise crops on the farm, or did he raise animals also?
We raised corn, wheat, hay, sugar cane.
Sugar cane.
We had horses, cows, hogs, chickens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now I'm going to begin to ask you, first of all, how many brothers and sisters did you have?
There were 4 girls and 3 boys, including myself.
Okay, could you tell me their names?
The oldest was my brother Francis Henry Abington, Celeste Lee Abington, Sarah Alabama Abington, Emma Abington, and Margaret Abington, Anthony Cosby Abington, and myself, George Abington.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How long did you live in the Wentzville area?
We moved off of the farm into town, I think was in the 40s. And then I left out of the Winstville area in 1948.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Lincoln Elementary School in Winstville, which was a 1-room school with 1 teacher that taught every class, every subject from the 1st through the 8th grade. Mm-hmm. After graduating from Lincoln Elementary, we rode a bus from Winstville to St. Charles to Franklin High School.
Okay.
This bus started in Warrenton. Mr. William Johnson was the driver. He started from Warrenton, stopped in Wright City to Forrestal to Winstville. Some joined us in Winstville from Troy, then continued to O'Fallon, from O'Fallon to Franklin.
Mm-hmm. Was Lincoln a school for black children?
Only.
Only.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Starting to Lincoln Elementary School in Winstville, I walked 2.5 miles to school, 2.5 miles back home. We had chores to do, lessons to study, and then that was it. On the weekends, when we had free time from studying and our chores, Mother and Daddy would sit down and play games with us. We would play checkers or dominoes or Chinese checkers. And,
That's a new one. What kind of checkers is that again?
Chinese checkers.
Chinese checkers. Okay, yes.
Play with marbles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a triangle with marbles in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you try to get from one end to one side to the other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you were fortunate enough to go to high school also?
Yes, I did. I graduated from Franklin High School in St. Charles
Mm-hmm.
in 1948.
In 1948. Okay. Were you able to go on then to college?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
My sister Margaret was the only one of us that went to college.
Mm-hmm. Why, could you tell me when your family first settled in the Wentzville area and why?
Well, they were born in my mother was born in Wentzville, my father was born, I thought Barstow, but in searching, we found out it was Quiver.
In Quiver. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Okay. Why did they leave the farm? Was it during the Depression
No.
time?
No, it was after the Depression, but it just wasn't too much going on.
Okay. They
My
didn't.
father went to work as a plasterer.
Mhm. I know a lot of people lost their property, their farms during that time period. Did they lose the farm, or did they just decide to sell it?
My understanding was the people that owned it had given my grandmother a lifetime home. I was told afterwards that they had willed it to her. I don't know, and I never did see any proof of that.
Mm-hmm. Did you know your grandparents?
My mother's mother, I knew. I lived with her for a while.
Okay. And what was her
while
name?
on the farm.
Okay. And what was her name, please?
Alabama Cosby.
Alabama Cosby. Wow. Yeah.
Which grandmother was it that had actually inherited? Which grandmother was it that owned the farm that was given to her?
We were on the farm, my grandmother, Alabama Cosby.
It was the Alabama Cosby's
That
inheritance.
was on the farm, yes.
Okay. Now, how was it growing up? Tell me about growing up.
Oh, it wasn't really too bad. We were closer to Flint Hill because we were just a mile out of Flint Hill. And we used to go over there to the market, to stores. And everybody treated you well, you know, just like you were one of the family. There was one family between us and my grandmother's brother. During the time that I come along, we were the only two black families out there.
The only two black families in that area. Okay. And there seemed to be harmony, so to speak.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Because I know that didn't always happen.
It was real interesting because during the harvest time, when they cut the wheat, there was a man come through with the machine and went to all of the farmers' houses and threshed, and everybody worked together. whose ever house it was at, they would have dinner for the workers, and then when you finished that house, you went to the next one, and on so on until you had got all the way around. The same way with collecting wood, because we used wood for heat, we used wood for cooking. So everybody would cut their trees, bring them up close to the house, and then they had a saw that went around from house to house, and everybody went together, and they worked together until everybody's wood was cut up.
Now, this was between the white families and the black families alike.
Mm-hmm.
What a wonderful thing. Would that be today? Uh-huh.
They
Yeah.
all worked together. At any time one needed help with something, the other would always join in and help
Mm-hmm.
in anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, okay. Now, what do you have of your family? Any treasures that you might have that were handed down from one to the other? Do you have anything like that?
No, I had my mother's father's watch,
Okay.
but I don't know how it got away somehow. I don't have it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But he had one of the old railroad watches.
Mm-hmm. Any photo albums or anything like that?
No.
Okay. All right. Your grandparents, or your grandmother in this situation, or your parents, did they ever tell you stories about the family?
No.
About their parents or their
No.
grandparents? It was
No.
never talked about.
No. My mother's mother, brothers, well, one brother and one sister I knew because they lived in the Winstville area.
Mm-hmm.
Her brother was all the other black family that was out in that area in Flint Hill in Winstville. We were on Route 2. Winstville Route 2 was where our mail come through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did they ever tell you anything about their own courtship and how they met or how they married? They never told you anything.
Never discussed that.
Did you ever wonder about that as a child?
No.
No?
We really didn't pay any attention to it. And my father's mother lived in Forrestal as long as I can remember. And I remember visiting her in Forrestal.
Mm-hmm.
My daddy's brother William lived in Forrestal. He come down from time to time and helped Daddy on the farm. Then
Mm-hmm.
that was.
So you had some uncles and aunts living in the area also, then?
My mother.
Your mother's side of the family.
Mm-hmm. My mother had an aunt and an uncle there in Westville.
Mm-hmm. Anna? You said her name was Anna?
No, I said an aunt.
Yeah.
Belle.
Oh, Aunt Belle. Okay. What was
And
her...
Uncle Henry.
And Uncle Henry. And what was their last name, please?
France.
France.
Henry France. And Belle was a France. She married a Hubbard.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay.
Philip Hubbard.
Philip Hubbard. You got a good memory. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So,
Uncle Henry was married to Emma. I don't know what her maiden name was, but I knew her as Elmer France.
Mm-hmm. So,
Now, my mother's father, brother, lived in Winslow.
and what was his name, please?
Bud Cosby.
Bud
They
Cosby.
called him Bud Cosby. I don't know what his rest of his name was.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew some of their children, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you had Henry's children, some of them.
Mm-hmm. So you had family around that you kept in touch with. Mm-hmm.
Yes, we kept in touch all the time.
Mm-hmm.
My mother had 4 sisters and a brother.
Mm-hmm.
We all kept in touch, and their children, my aunt's children.
Mm-hmm.
Uncle Henry's children we kept in touch with.
Mm-hmm.
We were all fairly close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop just for a second because I'm concerned that it's really soft, his speech. Okay, we're going to... Mr. Abington, I'd like to revisit a couple of things that we talked about on the first, in our first part of our interview. Your name, would you please state it again?
George Jefferson Abington.
Okay. And who were you named after?
My grandfather, well, my mother had a brother named George. My father had an uncle, George. So I got the George from them. The Jefferson was from my grandfather. His name was Jefferson.
The grandfather or
My
which side?
mother's father
Okay.
was named Jefferson, so that's where I got the Jefferson.
Okay. All right. And your mother and father's brothers and sisters, could you tell me, like, who you knew from your father's side of the family, your uncles or your aunts from your father's side first?
Okay, from my father's side, he had a brother named William Gilbert Abington. His sister Carrie Smith married an Abram, so I knew her. I knew she had one child, and I knew her.
Do you
Her
remember
name
what the
was-
child's name was, please? What was her child's name?
Isola,
Okay. Okay.
Isola,
Oh, you don't have to give me the last name. That's
Oh,
okay.
okay.
I understand. You know.
Thank
Okay. And then after that came?
and Aura. Aura was a Smith. She married a Gibson. I knew her. I knew her children.
Okay.
He had a brother, Irvin Smith. I knew his children. That's just about. His sister Lula Abington was married to a Boyd, James Boyd. I knew a couple of her children, Lawrence Boyd and
That's okay. There, that's okay. You know. All right.
Irvin Smith had 2 boys, Irvin Jr. and Robert, and a daughter, Audrey. Or Smith Gibson had Leroy Sylvester Gilbert Curtis, Ruby, Leona, and Bessie were Gibsons. She married again a Hunter, and there was Lloyd, Ralph, and Albert Jr.
I just wanted to tell you, normally I would not ask this much of a detail on family tree, okay? But there's a reason for this right now.
I understand.
Okay, there's a reason for this right now. Okay, and your mother's side of the family?
Mother had sister Cecilia. She had one child. Her sister Willie had 2 boys and a girl. Her sister Mildred had 3 boys and a girl. Sister Carrie didn't have any children. And her brother didn't have any children.
What was
her
his
brother
name?
George.
George.
He didn't have any children.
Okay. About the areas that they lived in, you mentioned that some of them lived in Forestell.
William Abington lived in Forestell.
Okay.
And my grandmother, Sarah Smith, was in Forestell. And that was the rest of those, her people have moved away from there.
Okay. Why did she live in Forestell?
I don't know. She was
Okay. Did she live?
Well, she had property. She owned her home there, and Uncle Will owned his home there.
Okay. Was it a farm type area?
No, there was just small areas.
Okay. So did they I guess I'm trying to did they live in town, or was it more in the rural part?
No, that was in town.
They lived in town. Okay.
Yeah, they were right off the highway.
Right off the highway. Let's see. I'm trying to think of Forestell.
That was 40, Highway 40.
The Highway 40 at the time. That's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah. Okay.
Right now, the truck stop, the new truck stop that they built there in Forestell on Highway 40, it was almost directly across in front of where they lived.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, after that clarification, is there anything else you want to tell me about that? About the area, the uncles, the aunts, the cousins, or anything like that? Is there anything else that you want to tell me about that?
Well, Uncle Weldon, his house sat right across from my grandmother's house. It was here, and his was here.
In the
Just a
Forestell
little
area?
road between them. But that was in Forestell. My mother's Aunt Belle lived in Winsfield, in town. So when they were building the highway, some of the workers would stop and eat at her house.
Ah.
But
Did she have like a little roadside cafe? Or did she just
No,
prepare
she
food
just did
because
it.
they needed it? Oh, that was very nice. That had to be a real experience. You don't think about, we see all these restaurants in these cities, and to think about a time when there was nothing and they were plowing through to make a new road. That's a wonderful experience, wonderful visual of that time period.
And after we moved into town, I guess the last 2, 3 years that I was in grade school, I was working for Mrs. Justice,
Mrs.
Justice Holmes in Winsboro.
Were they
Diane
builders?
Justice.
They were builders in that area? When you say Justice Holmes.
Yeah, she had one big house that she lived in, and she rented rooms. And then later she built had another building put up close to her house that she rented out to, but they called it the Justice Homes.
Justice.
And I would go and cut her grass, and in the winter take care of the furnace for her. She had a stoker. I would go and fill the stoker and clean out the ashes. And
How old were you when you did this?
that was the last 2 years that I was in grade school, and then I continued during high school. There was the theater in Winsfield.
Do you remember the name? Do you remember the name of the theater?
That's just the Winsfield Theater.
Just the Winsfield Theater. Okay, how simple can you be?
Mr. Reller was the owner, and he was living with Miss Justice, renting from Mrs. Justice, and he asked her if she knew anybody that he could get to, or would recommend him to clean up the theater. So she asked me, did I want to do it? So I said, I don't mind. So then she called him and told him that she was going to send me up. So he hired me. And a couple of months later, he asked her, did she know of anybody that he was satisfied with me? And he wanted to know, did she know anybody that she would recommend to learn to operate the machines? And she asked him, did he ask me? And he told her no. So she said, why don't you ask him and see if he wants it first? Then if he doesn't, then I'll see if I can find you somebody. So he asked me, I told him I would. So then I started to operate in the machines.
Well, how long did you do that? That's wonderful. That's wonderful. How long did you do that?
About 5 years.
Oh, 5 years. Wow. It was during the war time?
If he
No, that
graduated.
was 44. Started in 1944.
Aha. Wow. That's
40.
wonderful. That was a wonderful opportunity for you.
It was. It was.
Yes. Oh, me. I bet your mom and dad were very, very proud of you.
They were.
Yeah.
They had a movie, Imitation of Life, and I took my mother up to see that, and she cried all the way through it.
What was it about? Do you remember?
Imitation of Life.
Yes.
It was a lady that was working for some white people, and a maid, and she had a daughter that was fair-skinned, and she was passing, and she just ignored her mother altogether. And every time she would try to go visit her, she just talked very little, spent very little time with her. Then when her mother passed, they were coming out of the church with the body to go to the cemetery. And she ran up and told him to wait. That's my mother. But just the way that she treated her mother was what made my mother cry. I didn't cry. I wanted to take her and shake her good.
Yeah. But, wow. Okay. So after that, what did you do? After your job
My
there?
brother was in Detroit. Anthony was in Detroit, and he bought a gas station. And I went to Detroit with him and worked with him there. I did that until '51. I came back to St. Louis. And I went to work at McDonnell Aircraft.
What did you do at McDonald's?
They call it building maintenance. I went through the building picking up dumping trash cans and taking scrap metal out.
How long did you work there?
8 years.
8 years. And then what did you do after that?
I left and went to Evanston, Illinois.
Okay, and what did you do in Abington?
I worked at a church with my cousin in First Methodist Church of Evanston. And then I went to work for the University of Illinois as a groundskeeper.
Groundskeeper?
And then my baby sister was in California, and she kept after me to come out there. So I finally did in '69. And I didn't like it, but I stayed out there 22 years.
And then you came back home?
Yes.
Then you came back home. Where did you come back home to? To St. Louis or to the Wentzville area?
St. Louis.
St. Louis. Where you live now?
Yes. He came back to St. Louis in '99. And the throwaway papers they were throwing out, I picked up one in the yard one day and looked out, and airport was advertising for screeners. So I says, oh, well, let me go out here and see what they got to say. So I did. And I got hired. And I worked there for about 3 months. One of the ladies that was working for the charter airlines said, you ought to come over here and work with us. So one day we went over and we rode the bus from the parking lot to the airport together. And walked in, and her supervisor was coming in. She says, I told George he ought to come work with us. He says, yeah, why don't you? And he went and got an application, brought it back to me. And I filled it out and gave it back to him. And one day I come in, my supervisor and I was standing and talking, and he walked in. He says, oh, Terry, I'm going to take George away from you. So she says, you can't do that, Woody. You got all of my good help. He says, you think I want the bad help? So I transferred over to them and ATS, and I worked with them 10 years.
And what were you doing with them, please?
We were checking bags, issuing boarding passes, putting them on the planes and taking them off during bag claims. So.
And that was approximately what year?
1999, February 99 until February '09.
Wow. And then you retired, right?
TSA took over as security, and they changed the security doors to fingerprints. And they had a little box on their desk that they took your fingerprint in, and then it went into computer. They couldn't get a read-in on my fingerprint.
You're an unknown person. Who would have thought?
They tried all 10 fingers. They got one out of one thumb, and they couldn't get it clear enough to match the original fingerprint.
Wow. That's unusual.
But it was several people that was working for Southwest Airlines they couldn't get theirs. So it was just a flaw in the machine that they couldn't straighten out.
That's unusual. Well, it sounds to me like you had a very varied type of work history. What a wonderful story in itself. Now I'm going to ask you, when
The last thing that I did there
okay.
was I would go down to the gate, bring the planes in. When they brought the plane up, I would pull the jetway up to the plane, open the door and let them off. Then after the crew come off, close the jetway door, go down to bag claims. If we had a plane going out, I would go down, board the plane, close the door, pull the jetway back, and then take the times that they departed.
That's interesting. Now I'm going to ask you, when did you meet Mrs. Abington? And how did you meet her?
I was in St. Louis, and I stopped in a little restaurant and was eating, and that was where I met her, and we started to talk, and then it went on from there.
What
And
year was that?
that was in 1954.
1954. Okay. And so you were married when?
We were married the first part of 55.
Okay. Do you remember the exact date?
No, I don't.
Okay, but you were married in the first part of the year in 1955.
My oldest daughter was born in July the 20th, 1955.
Okay. Uh-huh. And what was her name, please?
Vanessa Dale Abington.
Vanessa, say that again, please.
Vanessa Dale.
Okay, okay.
And then in 62, we had another daughter, Angela Marie. She had a daughter named Patricia Pate. At the time we got married, she was 5 months old. And she was Daddy's baby. She still is. She and her uncle got into an argument about something one day. And he says, Uncle don't like you no more. She says, I'm going to tell my daddy. So she came to me and she says, Daddy, Uncle Pate don't like me. I says, baby, that's all right. Don't you know you Daddy's heartbeat? And she's been Daddy's heartbeat ever since she ran back to him. Well, I'm my daddy's heartbeat, so you don't have to like me.
So just the three children you had?
Uh-huh.
And from those children, do you have grandchildren? And did they marry and have grandchildren?
Yes, I have. Patricia has 2 boys and a girl. Vanessa has 2 boys. Pat's youngest son has 2 children, a boy and a girl. Her daughter has 2 boys and a girl. And, Vanessa's oldest son has 4 girls and a boy. And one of his daughters has a boy and a girl.
So, okay, do you remember all of their names, or is that asking a lot?
No, I don't remember all of them.
Okay, that's just fine, but...
Now,
And
the great-grands, I don't remember their names. But
okay,
Vanessa's oldest son is Devon Abington. And their youngest son is
it's all right.
oh, that little boy.
That's okay.
It's on the tip end of my tongue.
I know. We'll go to the next one, and you can come back, and you can fill that space in. maybe.
Okay. Pat's son is one is Byron. The other boy, I don't know. He's in Miami. I haven't seen him for a while. And what's the girl's name?
That's okay. That's all right. We can fill in those spaces another time. Okay? We can fill those in another time. Okay. Now we're going to kind of switch gears. First of all, I forgot to ask you, were you involved in any of the wars that came along? Were you in the Army or anything like that?
No, I wasn't in service at all.
All right.
Both of my brothers were in World War II.
Okay.
My younger brother, Anthony, was wounded in Italy. He had 5 shell fragments in his left foot when he passed. In fact, when they discharged him, they told him he was going to have to come back and have that metal taken out of his foot. And he says, "No, I'm going home. You're not going to cut on me anymore." And they told him if he ever went to Veterans Hospital anywhere, they were going to operate on that foot. So he went home and asked the family doctor about it, and he told him, "Well, as long as it stays in the flesh, you don't have to worry about it." He said, "But if it ever touches a bone, you'll lose the whole foot." He says, "Well, I'll take my chances." He never did have him operate on it, but he...
Do you, one question I forgot to ask you that is really important, is to have an idea of what happened on farms during those early farm years when you were a child. Can you tell me what was a normal day like?
What was the normal way?
A normal day. What was a normal day on the farm? What kind of chores did you have? What kind of things did your mom do? Those kinds of things, and your dad.
Well, Monday was always wash day. So we had to get our wash water together before going to school.
Okay, so did you not have running water in the house?
No.
Okay, where
We
did you
had
get
a
the
well.
water? Oh, you had a well, okay.
And she had an iron kettle in the yard that we built a fire under. She boiled clothes in. She also made her own soap, lye soap.
She made her own lye soap.
Uh-huh.
From the butchering, after you butchered, is that, and then you made the lye soap?
Uh-huh.
Okay, go ahead.
We had to cut wood for the heating stove. We had to have wood for the cook stove. After dinner, you had to clean up the dinner dishes, get your lessons, get your bath, and get into bed. And that was just about a normal day. We had to milk the cows and feed the hogs and the chickens, gather the eggs. The morning before you left for school, you got enough wood in the house for the day. And you fed your animals, milked the cows, ready to go to school.
And your father, he did all the plowing and the preparing of the fields. Did you help him do that?
We did that on Saturdays.
On Saturdays.
We would help on Saturdays because that was the only day we were home.
So
My brother and I.
education was very important to your family because they saw that you did minimal chores during the week, if I'm hearing this correctly, and then because you had school and schoolwork.
Mm-hmm. It was funny though, one evening, my sister, Margaret, I don't know, she was doing something over there, and Daddy told her, one of my teachers had stopped by the house. So Daddy told Margaret, says, when you finish what you're doing, you have charge with his lessons. So the teacher spoke up and says, oh no, she can't do that. He has to get his own lessons. She can't do his lessons for him. And he went on. So when he stopped, Daddy said, are you finished? He said, yes. He says, okay. Margaret, when you get through with that, you help him with his lessons.
Aha. So
I didn't tell her to do them. I said help him.
There's a difference there. I don't remember. Did we say where the school was, the Lincoln School, where was that at?
In Winsville.
It was in Winsville. Do you remember what part of Winsville it was, where it was?
Yes, it was right on the Highway 41.
Okay.
And just about a block away, there was a Y in the road where 40 and 61 met. And there was a gas station there, a Shell gas station they called the Y Cafe. And
so it was really close in that area.
And there was another station. There was city service, they called it.
Did you do your own butchering?
Yes, my daddy did.
Did you all help? Your whole family helped?
And then anytime there was butchering, the neighbors would all come in and help. They helped each other.
So there was kind of in common butchering and packaging and cutting of the meat, preparing of the sausages. It was all done in common.
Uh-huh.
What a wonderful thing. Okay.
They would kill them, scald them, skin them, and hang them again, skin them, then start cutting.
Did everybody have their own
the
little
smokehouse
jobs?
did the smoking in.
How did you help?
Well, mostly looking and waiting on them, is handing them different tools that they wanted.
Getting water when they needed it, things like that. Now you said you didn't have running water. What about electricity? How did you see?
We had kerosene lamps and lanterns if you had to go outside, but we had kerosene lamps in the house. And you'd have to flame the chimneys so that you could see. That was very, very interesting.
Very challenging too.
Uh-huh.
Yes, yes. Do you remember when you got running water or electricity?
That was after we moved into town.
So you did not have it while you lived out of town?
On the farm, no.
Okay, and you moved into town in what year, do you remember?
I think it was either 39 or 40.
Okay. And while you were on the farm, did you have indoor plumbing?
No. No. That wasn't until we got in town. And then, well, during the time that I was in school, we didn't have inside plumbing. Not even at school until, that was, I guess, in the late 40s.
Did you have a one-seater or a two-seater?
No, it was two. And they were separate, one for the boys and one for the girls.
Gotta ask those questions. Okay. Now I'd like to turn to a new subject. You came to the St. Charles County Historical Society. Do you remember when you first came here looking? Do you remember when that was?
No, that was last year, though.
Last year, in 2000?
No.
It was last year.
Yeah, it was last year,
Your
because
niece
this is the
brought you.
first of the year now.
It was like June or something, and it was your niece brought you.
Somewhere along in there.
Yeah. So about June of 2010, or
11.
2011.
Uh-huh.
Okay. What did you come with, and what were you looking for?
I was trying to see if I could find my grandfather, my father's father name, and try to find out about him, because I never knew anything about him, never heard anything about him. And some of the younger ones had gotten together with the family reunion, and they started asking questions, and I said, well, look, I don't know. Well, how did so-and-so get to be a cousin? How did this happen? How did that happen? And really, it wasn't too far I could go, with the exceptions of my aunt's children, or my uncle's children. I couldn't tell him anything because I didn't know.
So it was, you were wanting to look back and to find something out about your grandfather.
Uh-huh.
Okay. What did you know at that point about your grandfather?
Nothing.
I was told
My
that
father's father, I didn't know
Your father's
anything
father.
about.
Okay. I was told that you came in with a slip of paper and a name on a slip of paper. What was on that slip of paper?
I think it was just my grandmother's name.
Grandfather. It was Anthony Jerome Abington. It was from, it was your grandfather. It's your father's name.
I had my father's name
Your father's name was the
And-
only thing that you had.
and my grandmother's name when she
His
passed.
mother. His
Uh-huh.
mother. And
Right.
what was your father's mother's name?
Sarah Smith.
Sarah Smith. So that's all that you knew.
That was all that I knew. That was all I had ever heard.
And nothing was ever spoken about in your family.
Nothing at all about his father.
Okay. Did you know that there was a history of slavery in your background at all?
No.
You didn't know even that.
Uh,
What a place to start.
Well, the thing that I was thinking was if I could find his birth certificate or something, I would get his father's name because I knew there were records kept on births and deaths and so forth. And I'd always say, well, you can go to the county office and find out. And so I said, well, I'll go to St. Charles and see if I can find anything. I went to the courthouse and they directed me over here and said that I might be able to get some information there because they didn't have it over there.
What did you find out about your family?
Well, I did find out, I knew there were some Smiths and some Abingtons and my father's brothers and sisters, but I didn't know where they started and where it stopped. But I did find out the names of the Abingtons and the Smiths. I knew where the division come in.
You knew that there were
And
that.
when my grandmother married the Smith, I found that out.
Okay, so you found that out here at the
Yes,
at the
right here.
Historical Society. Did you find anything else out?
Yes. My daddy's brother William was in World War I, which I didn't know he had been in any service at all.
Okay. Okay. Anything else that you found out?
Yes, I found my mother and father's marriage license, my uncle's marriage license, and one of my aunt's marriage license.
Anything else?
Well, I got some of the children from my aunt.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you to put that in on the tape at this point, but it's important to know where you started out with. A slip of paper with your father's name.
Mm-hmm.
And you were able to find all of that up to this point.
Yes.
Anything else you want to add that you found out?
They was told that there is an Abington cemetery somewhere, which I didn't know anything about. But whether there is anybody there that's related to me or not, I don't know.
Okay.
That I don't know. I know my grandmother, my father's mother, is buried in Forestall. One of her daughters is buried in Forestall because I went up there one day looking to see if I could find Uncle Will's gravestone, tombstone, see if there was the one there. I didn't see it, but I did find my grandmother's. And that stone has 3 names on it. I don't remember what the other 2 were, but it's 3 names on her stone.
That's going to be an important thing to find out,
And
to help
first,
you.
I said I was going to take a picture of it, and I'm going back up there and take a picture of it. But I know she is buried in Forestall at Smith Chapel Cemetery. And I think Uncle Will is in there. I'm not sure, but
Do they have records there that you can look at?
no.
No?
I tried contact Jefferson City. They sent me. I wrote them, and they started looking for me instead of my uncle, and wrote me a letter back telling me they could find no record of George Abington's death.
I hope not.
So Doris made a note on it telling them that they were looking for the wrong person and to look for William. And I sent it back to them, and they sent me another letter saying that they couldn't find it, so I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Good stopping place? Okay. All right. This story is to be continued. Okay. Now.
Can you see this okay, Mr. Abington? Here is a sort of a family tree chart, sort of like a road map to your family history. And we start here with you and the name that you first gave me, Anthony Jerome Abington. And your mother's name, Irene.
Irene Cosby, yes.
And the things that we've been able to find, I've got a lot of papers here that document these things. Because that's pretty important to be able to, not just our memories, but as you've enjoyed, is getting the papers that tell when they got married and like you were first looking for when they were born and when they died. Having the actual papers to document that are so important. And your father was born in 1885.
Yes.
And your mother was born in 1888.
That's right.
The 18th of January. Now, you've talked a lot about your mother's side of the family and how they lived in Wentzville, and you were very close to them. But it was your father's side of the family that you really wanted to know a lot more about.
Right.
And we know now from the censuses and the marriage certificates and everything else how Sarah A. on the marriage license, Sarah A. She was Sarah A. Smith because she remarried a Smith. Now we also know that your father, besides him, he has a brother named William.
Yes.
And we have been able to find out a bit more about than we have your father, as you know. One of the things that had happened one day, we were talking, and you were describing a cemetery, and now you talk about them being in the Smith Chapel Cemetery.
Yes.
We have a researcher here that volunteers that loves to research on cemeteries. And she had come in one day because she had just been out and shared that.
Right.
And what you're calling Smith Chapel was also a schoolhouse, did you say?
Smith Chapel.
Was a schoolhouse too? Or was it
Yes.
just the chapel? A lot of times in those days, the building served both purposes and was a school during the week and a church on the weekends.
But there is a building there. The building, this lady that you're speaking about told me that the schoolhouse was still standing. And she was wondering about if it was a possibility of restoring it, and I didn't know exactly where the school was until I went up there looking for my uncle's marker. And I saw the building there. I didn't find my uncle's marker, but I did find my grandmother's marker.
Can you tell me more of where it's located?
It's right off of Highway 70, behind the truck stop.
Okay.
The exit there, down the first driveway on your right, goes into the cemetery. It's an old gate there. It's kind of wobbly, and as you go into that gate, you go right up to the cemetery. The church itself is fallen down, but it's gone. But the cemetery is still there. The markers, a lot of graves markers are still there. There are some that are broken and fallen down, but
And Sarah's buried there.
this building is there is another building in the corner there, which I think must have been the school.
Okay. What would you say if I told you that there are probably 3 Abington cemeteries up in that neck of the woods? One of which even Lucille Wickens, who remembers it and has notes from it, is having a difficult time right now relocating. But another one, which was across Highway 70, more on the south side of 70, just that was the north side where you're talking about.
Yes.
That's the north side of 70. But we all need to keep in mind when we think of big interstates that they weren't always a big interstate.
Right.
As Judy said, at one time in 1922, it was just a road being plowed through. Well, a little bit south of 70, there's it's still in the Forestell community. There's another place which is closer to what the original road was. I mean, it was actually very early road, and the road actually went through more there. And there was a large family that lived in that area, the Abington family. Now, the day that Lucille had come in, she was sharing with me how she had shared where the location of that cemetery was with another family from Texas. And they were apparently the slave owner family, okay? There's not only the original log house is still standing. And another cemetery with Abingtons. Would you like to go see that sometime?
Yes, I sure would.
It is possible that perhaps your dad is buried there. Maybe in that cemetery. Because with Sarah, I mean, she was born in 1855. And by that very date, we can probably figure that she was of the Abington plantation. And that would have probably been either Henry or William Abington, who were white slave owners. I wanted to also share with you and give you a complimentary copy today of one of our recent heritages.
Okay.
It has an article in here about the colored troops during the Civil War. And your family has a distinction of not only, there's Abingtons that served, that were white in the Confederate troops, but there's Abingtons that served in the Confederate, not in the Confederate, excuse me, but in the Union colored troops right here in St. Charles. And they're named Abington. So we're pretty sure, but don't know for sure yet, but we think that they're probably your ancestors.
Okay.
So I wanted to give you that. There's an article in there, like I said, on the Union colored troops with the Abingtons in there. And after the Civil War, the Abington that was living in that area that had served in the troop, his name is William Abington. And knowing that your father had a brother named William Abington, it's looking like a good chance that that is going to tell us more about your father.
Now, my father had an uncle named George Abington, and I don't know where he was born or who his father was either. I know when he passed in 1943, he was living in Clarksville, Missouri, Clarksville, Louisiana, up in that area.
Mm-hmm. And what year did he die?
1943.
1943.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
that's,
Amelia, his wife's name was Amelia. I don't know what her maiden name was.
so George and Amelia. George is another brother besides William to your father.
No, it was my father's uncle.
Oh, your father's
George
uncle.
was my father's uncle.
Oh, okay.
His wife's name was Amelia.
Okay. So that takes us.
And
That
they
would take
were
us
in
another generation.
Louisiana
back.
when he passed. Louisiana, Clarksville, up in that area when he passed.
Okay. The difficulty becomes with the records, and as you know, there is a story you forgot to share, and I'm going to ask you to share with Judy that I thought was so interesting of why your name, well, does your name have two B's in it or one B?
Originally, it was 1B. We had a school teacher in Lincoln Elementary School in Wentzville that was in Abington with 2 B's. And somehow she convinced my daddy to use 2 B's. And that's how the 2 B's came out
Okay.
to effect. But
And then when you tried to get a copy of some sort of certificate or social security number or jobs one time?
I went to apply for a job, and they had given me an okay to go to work, and they asked me for a birth certificate. So when I took my birth certificate back, it had 1B, and my social security card had 2. And he told me he couldn't give me a job because I had 2 different names.
It really does get difficult, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Abington, I have a last question for you. How do you feel about what you have found out about your family? How are those feelings coming about in you? And, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm glad to find it out because I knew that my father had a sister named Lula. I didn't know Lula was all I knew. By doing the search, I found out she was Lula Abington. And my father was Anthony Abington. And then the only records we found showed the rest as Smiths. We didn't find my Uncle William at all in the birth records.
Have you shared any of this with the rest of your family?
I have mentioned it to a couple of my nephews, my niece, nephew, and another cousin that was with me when I came out here. My dad's sister, Eva's daughter, was with me when I came here the first time. And
how are they feeling about this?
Well, they're interested. They want to find out more.
What a great gift you're giving them. What a great gift you are giving them.
Because I didn't know it. And my aunt's daughter that came out here with me, she didn't know. And
Well, I suspect that this story is going to continue to grow and to manifest itself. All of the hidden secrets that we have as we continue to dig our family tree.
right. Now my oldest sister married Alfred Cash, and they have well, they had 2 daughters and 3 daughters and a son. And he had 2 sons before they married. My second oldest sister, Sarah, married Leon Long, and they had 2 boys and 2 girls. And then
And that's the one that
Emma.
contacted us.
had 1 daughter. She married Lunsford, Ralphie Lunsford, and they had 1 daughter. Margaret doesn't have any children. Anthony has 1 son. Anthony Cosby has 1 son, and he has 2 daughters. And I have 3.
And you have 3. That's right. That's right. Okay, I think for right now, I think we can call it a day.
All right.
Because I think what we have to talk about is that trip to that cemetery.
It's a
For
little cold
one.
today.
And where do we go from here? Where do we go
I
from
don't
here?
know.
Well, I
Well,
suspect.
I will go to Forestdale and take a picture of my grandmother's stone before I come back.
Can do that. I happen to live off in that direction, and I drive through Forestdale every day. So I know about where you're talking about, and I'd like you to share that with me if you wouldn't mind. I'd like to share that, and so that we can then get a better idea, and we can actually look at this on maps. And we have here in the archives things like all those early records of those early one-room schools. We might even be able to tell what kind of a student George was. But Smith Chapel, yeah.
Well, when I went to Franklin, Melvin Washington was principal.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you very much, Mr. Abington, for sharing with us and your story. And again, maybe I ought to ask this last question. What would you like to say to your children and your grandchildren? What would you like to say to them that you want to impart to them for them to remember? You know, what do you want them to remember about you?
Well, I have taken them to Wentzville and showed them the school and told them about the difference, the addition that had been made to it. And I've also taken them over to Franklin and showed them the Franklin High School building. And they were impressed with that. So that's about all that my mother and father and her uncle and his wife, they're all of those graves are close together, and I've
But what words
pointed
of
them out to her.
what words of wisdom would you like to leave them with?
Oh gosh.
When they're looking at this 20 years from now, George,
Yeah.
what is it that you want them to know?
Well, they didn't experience a one-room school with one teacher teaching 8 classes and all subjects. That would have been an experience for them, because when they come along, they said 15 people in a class is too many. What would those teachers did? They had to teach 8 classes and the subjects in each one, all the subjects in each one. It would have been amazing.
Looking back at your own life, what do you consider your greatest memories, your greatest treasures? What do you value from how you've lived, from what you've learned?
Well, really, it was good. The experience that we got was good. Any adult that caught you wrong, corrected you, they got a hold to you. When you got home, you got it again. And my mother had a policy: if you didn't tell it yourself first before somebody else told her, you got it double.
So honesty was a very important thing for you and your
Yes. And the respect from the community. Everybody respected you. Wentzville was a small town at that time. Everybody knew everybody. And really, when we were out on the farm, we were 2.5 miles out of town with no phone. And if you did something in town, Mother knew it before you got home. How that happened, nobody knows.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What an end to such a time together. Always tell Mother right away. Yeah. Thanks.
During the church, the church in Wentzville was very small, and the Grand Chapel.
The Grand Chapel, that was your church? Okay.
Which was a small church. Hopewell had a Baptist church, which was Hopewell Baptist, and their congregation was small too. So the two churches worked together. And then the fourth Sunday in May, Hopewell would have a basket dinner out on the ground, and we would go there. The two churches worked together, and they had their baptizing. The first Sunday in June, Wentzville would have theirs. And then Farsdale joined in, and O'Fallon joined in, Wright City joined in, Troy joined in. My Uncle Henry, that lived in Wentzville, his son was in Clayton, and he came Chesterfield, and he brought his pastor up there one first Sunday in June, and but all of these churches, the pastor from each one of these churches and their choirs would sing and preach. The pastors would preach, the choirs would sing, and you'd eat dinner on the ground. And so when Cousin Joe brought his pastor from Chesterfield up there, he says, "Oh, this is nice." He says, "I think I'll get in here. Can I join?" And they called it the Seven Church Union. But every year they would go from one church to the other.
It's marvelous. Where did they baptize? Where did they baptize?
In Hopewell, they went to one of the farmers' ponds.
Okay.
In Winsfield, there was a creek up in town that we went to.
Wow.
And they were all marched down there together, and the preachers assisted in the baptism.
That's marvelous.
But all of the churches worked together. And after that started, and they...
I wonder if they still keep it up today.
I don't think so.
They probably, the churches have become too big for that. Yes.
Well, different preachers.
They wanted to do their own thing.
And that's probably what happened. They just got away from it. Some of the older people died out, and the younger ones didn't keep it going.
Well, Mr. Abington, we're going to go ahead and close it up here. Again, I would ask you, when you know, as you leave here, you're going to think of more things. Just make little notes to help you remember that when we get back together that you'd like to tell us about whatever it might be. But just make yourself a little note, okay? And as soon as I get this edited, I will get that copy to you so that you can see it, and then you can say, oh, I want to add some more into it, or, you know, whatever else it is.
Well, my mother's uncles and aunts that were living in Winsfield, they are buried in Winsfield. They're in the Grand Chapel area, cemetery. My daddy's sister Aura and her husband and some of her children buried in Hopewell, at the Hopewell Baptist Church cemetery. So I know where they are. My mother and father in Greenwood in St. Louis.
Okay.
My mother's oldest sister's in Winsfield. My grandmother and grandfather and my mother's mother and father in Winsfield. Henry and his wife is in Winsfield. But see, he had 9 boys. Henry had 9 boys. I don't know all of them. And I don't know the names.
Well, you know more than you did before, and I'm going to tell you, your memory is something else.